How the finals broke the shooter curse.
Open playtest peaked at a massive 265,000 concurrent players on Steam, which isn't counting the huge number of console players too. And personally, this is the first time in a long time that I've really wanted to sit down each day and play an FPS game. The genre.
So I've seen the finals and I never played the betas or whatever. And not gonna lie, the game looks pretty good, but I'm still a little skeptical because it does look like there's a lot of visual clutter or whatever. I don't know how it like feels. All I can judge is just based off of the like the gameplay and whatnot, but it does look good. It's a different little game mode layout than your normal, I don't know, either BR or arena shooter, in that it's 3 teams of 3 for like the main mode or whatever. And you just you have to go around, collect money, and then deposit it into this little thingy. And then what? There's like 3 classes, like light, medium, heavy. But I mean, I'm curious.
Has been stale the past few years, with countless new games missing the mark and existing games like Overwatch, Apex Legends, and Battlefield struggling to maintain interest. So why the finals? Why have they succeeded in making such a fun game when so many others have recently failed? In my opinion,
I think one of the things is just the layout of like the game mode of choice. It's 3v3 and it's not like a killing like a TDM type of objective. It's just, collect the most money, deposit it, and like, yeah, it's since there's only 3 teams of 3, it's very like rock paper scissors, in that if you see one team going in on another team, the third team will automatically just go in because it's like, oh, what, both one or both of those teams are going to be weak, so you might as well just go in.
much of this comes down to creating gameplay that feels fun to win and still feels fun to lose, or at the very least, losing doesn't feel terrible. There are essentially 2 current game modes, although there are some variations between rank.
That's kind of weird. Like, you don't really have to worry about winners feeling good about winning, because when you win, you just win. But the questionable thing is, how do you make losing not feel bad besides the fact that you lost? And I don't know. I don't really know what this game does to fulfill that, because in every other sport or game, like if you're not first, you just lost. I mean, in basketball, baseball, so on and so forth, it's just win lose. It's just binary like that.
Ranked and casual, and they require you to accumulate the most amount of money. One of which can be boiled down to King of the Hill, where if you hold an objective by the end of the time, you earn money. And the other is essentially Team Deathmatch, but you need to physically collect coins off downed opponents, or by opening vaults around the map and deposit them to earn the money, aka the points needed to win. The next important component here is the number of teams. The King of the Hill has 3 teams of 3 pitted against each other, and the Team Deathmatch has 4 teams of 3 battling it out. What's elegant about combining these objectives and multiple teams is the randomness and chaos it injects into your gameplay. This is important because it blurs the lines between player skill and performance in the game. Let's use the Bank It mode as an example.
And I think that's really important because in the past, a lot of shooters, the traditional game modes are TDM, was it King of the Hill? I don't know, something like Hardpoint, Capture the Flag. What else? Those are like the main shooter, like, what do you call it? Objective modes, and like S&D, if you want. So when you throw the wrench of like 3 or 4 teams in a match, it doesn't become binary as much as like a win or lose. It becomes more, placing. It's like, first, second, third, fourth in that sense. So, oh, if you didn't get first, you could still get second. So from that perspective, I get it.
example, which is the Team Deathmatch-esque mode, and the mode I've spent most of my time playing. Your team might dominate a fight with another team, but to actually earn the money, you still need to walk over their bodies and then try to escape to a hand-in point. All the while, any of the other teams may be intercepting you while you're down a player, out of position grabbing the coins, low on health, reloading, etc. And as a result, a lower skilled team may be able to take you out and collect all that money. Often, this can result in an incredibly tense and enjoyable cycle of teams respawning and seeking out that victorious team. And every time the stakes grow higher with more and more money being pooled. You may be thinking that the best team should always win, and that being third or fourth partied would be annoying. But the thing is, you also get to respawn, you get to go back and do the same thing to them if you can. Plus, with the destructible environment and huge range of utility available to players, there is always a feeling that there was something you could have done differently to survive.
That is also supposedly another big selling point for this game. So one of the main things that this game has above like a lot of other shooters is the destructibility of like all the buildings in the match or whatever. So from that perspective, a lot of the matches can be, you could like play the same match, but it'll play out differently depending on how much of a building you destroy or whatnot. So I think that's pretty cool, but honestly, it's only a matter of time before people just meta the fuck out of everything.
I actually think it's an incredibly underrated component of gameplay to create an environment where there is more than one path to victory, and where players of all skill ranges at least have a chance at succeeding. Take PUBG as an example. The game was so janky and buggy, yet it was so incredibly popular, and it was the kind of game that anyone could play and still enjoy. There are many reasons for this, but in particular, they achieved this with the fast time to kill. So if a low skill player got the jump on a high skill player, they could very well take them down first. Secondly, the grand scale of the map, buildings, trees, foliage, etc. provided opportunities for lower skilled players to progress into the round and overcome the odds. In contrast, a game like Apex Legends, being highly polished and having immaculate gameplay, struggles with having balanced games that feel fair, which can turn away players that don't want to take it so seriously and feel like they have to queue up with a pre-made team to even have a chance.
Yeah, but that's just the matchmaking system.
The high time to kill and huge amounts of utility available to players means better teams have more time during a fight to express their skill. If you were to pit a team of 3 professional players against a team of bronze solo queuing players, I would go as far as to say the bronze team would never win a game, even if you ran it back 1,000 times.
Yeah.
There is just too much time for that professional team to be better. If you then suddenly made the game one-shot kill, that bronze team would inevitably start to win some matches.
Yeah, because when you lower the time to kill, you all of a sudden level out the playing field, because anybody can kill anybody at any given time, and there's no room for skill expression, at least in terms of aiming.
The whole point of that tangent is that the finals has a high time to kill, so better players have more time to be better. Yet, lower skill teams can still win fights and win matches. Well, that's because of the game modes forcing you to take risks to earn money, and the multiple teams injecting uncertainty and unfairness into a fight, which in my opinion is a good thing, at least for the casual game modes. If the finals was a simple last man standing or team deathmatch between 2 teams, then suddenly you would run into issues in some matches where the better team completely dominates the other team. This feels bad for the winning team as there's little challenge, and it feels terrible for the losing team as you've been stomped all game and feel like you haven't been able to do anything. So the game modes and multiple teams provide enough randomness to make each game feel different and to allow players and teams of all skill levels to enjoy, participate in, and even win games. One last point before moving on is that I believe this can and probably will break down in ranked modes over time as the meta develops and players manage to reduce variance through team compositions and strategy. Fortunately, I think the casual modes will mostly be safe from this, and it's up to the ranked players to decide if this more structured gameplay is enjoyable enough to engage in. Let's talk about the moment-to-moment gameplay. Generally,
Yeah, because what ends up happening with every game, or at least modern shooter. Like all the games get data mined. They figure out the chances and the probabilities of things to spawn at certain locations and whatnot. So I mean, it's just an inevitability of every game. It's not like one game is immune to this. But yeah, you pretty much nailed it.
Broadly speaking, the movement is relatively slow and rigid, at least if you were to compare it to a game like Apex Legends. They make up for this with an abundance of ziplines, jump pads, and generous mantling, so traversing the map isn't so tedious. This may be a controversial take, so bear with me. I am of the opinion that this more restricted movement makes combat more enjoyable for the majority of players.
Yeah.
And perhaps instead of calling it restricted, we could think of it as deterministic. What I mean by this is that, at least in the recent playtest, the players you face, and even those with great movement, are bound by the movement mechanics. If they crouch, slide, and jump, you know they're locked into a certain trajectory with minimal air strafing.
Yeah. This is this essentially feels like Struth does not like tap strafing in Apex.
If someone mantles on a ledge, they climb up with an animation and stand up where you'd expect them to.
And this is Struth not liking super glides in Apex as well.
If they take a jump pad, they can only air strafe a small amount to change their trajectory. You can still have great movement in the finals, it's just that this movement is deterministic, so you don't feel bamboozled by seemingly impossible changes in direction or momentum. In
I think that's
Apex
fine.
Legends, your crouch, slide, and jumping opponent can tap strafe to instantly and completely ignore their inertia and move in
Yeah.
a totally different direction mid-air. That
I mean, and that's not to say that like one movement system is better than the other. It's just what kind of audience are you trying to create with your game is essentially what's going on here. If you like grinding away at movement and you like to get better at movement and have that pay off, then go play Apex. But if you don't like all that advanced movement and so on and so forth, and you want to, I don't know, play like a little slower, I would take it. Maybe give finals a shot.
mantling opponent, instead of climbing up on the ledge, can launch themselves into the distance, and that jump padding opponent can also ignore their inertia and completely change direction. This movement tech has a massive skill cap and feels incredibly rewarding to pull off, but it's the sort of thing that's fun to do but doesn't feel great to play against. When movement feels almost random and unpredictable, you start to lose your agency as a player. To feel connected and in control of the game, it's important to know what is and isn't possible at any given moment. I'm sure more and more movement tech will
Oh, wait. Let me go back.
Movement tech has a massive skill cap and feels incredibly rewarding to pull off, but it's the sort of thing that's fun to do but doesn't feel great to play against. When movement feels almost random and unpredictable, you start to lose your agency as a player.
When movement feels random, you feel like you lose your agency as a player. I mean, I get what he's saying with this, but I mean, it like with all the like neo strafing and all that bullshit you just saw with the Octane doing that shit on top of the car. That's like less than 1% of players that are doing that. But that's just not the norm. And I don't know. It's like you paint like a broad brushstroke of, all M and K players can like neo strafe and do all this shit, or maybe players like using configs to do this and whatnot. It's like, no. Like the amount of players actually doing all that stuff is actually less than 1%. But I mean, if someone's moving around like crazy in any shooter like that, I mean, yeah, I do get it in that it feels like you can't really do anything. But I don't know, maybe like I would say as a new player, it feels like you can't do anything. And then maybe as like a mid-level player, you could kind of, rise to the occasion and try to kill that person with your aim or whatever. But then maybe like as a high-level player, you could see that someone is doing that and then counter it in some way. Like if you get caught out in the open, like that person, you could try to out aim them, but it's really hard. Or you could duck right beneath the car, or outposition them. I mean, it just depends, you know. But I get what you were saying.
To feel connected and in control of the game, it's important to know what is and isn't possible at any given moment. I'm sure more and more movement tech will be discovered over time. I just hope it doesn't break that deterministic, quantifiable feel that the game currently has.
Yeah.
Another element of the gameplay that is very welcome are the generous glowing outlines around enemy players. It has become a trend in modern FPS games to have incredible visual fidelity, light.
I actually remember this clip from the old one of the old, what was this, like 2018, 2019 Modern Warfare, or one of the CODs back in the day. What was it? So he pokes out the door, and because this was a big complaint in this Call of Duty, all the buildings had windows that you could like poke and peek out of. So there would be no reason for you to like run out here into the streets, where instead of like running out in the streets, you could just take a building, poke your head out of a window or something, and you would, you know, the gameplay, the environment would reward campy gameplay versus like run around and rush down type gameplay. So yeah, this guy is just gonna get to about right here, and then he's just gonna go down like these bodies.
Lighting and extensive environmental detail, all of which seems nice enough, but you're left feeling like you can't see anything.
Yeah.
And especially can't see or track enemies during.
Oh yeah, and the whole what was this? The shadows, the lighting. Whenever whenever your character would go into like a shadowy area, your character would just get all blacked out. So having the outlines, like, doesn't Overwatch do that with the red outlines around the players? So it takes away like the stealth aspect of the game. As long as the enemy is right there to some degree, you can tell that they're there. So I do think that's cool.
During firefights. Fortunately, the virtual setting of the game means they can add these generous outlines without having to worry about breaking any immersion. Before I get into the nitty-gritty details of the gunplay, let me just say that it's solid. Shooting at things in this game feels good, but it could be even better. If you play the latest playtest, like me, you may have also noticed that flick shots don't really work. Shots you think should have hit simply don't, and that most certainly does not feel good. I would consider flicking to be my specialty, so it was galling to have so much trouble with the revolver and sniper. From what I can gather, the issues with flicking seem to come down to input lag. Quite simply, your shots fire later than you intend them to.
Oh, that feels like shit then.
Take a look at this example. Here you can see it takes at least an extra frame from clicking to having the weapon fire. This means there is at a minimum a 16.7 millisecond delay. I can't know exactly when the shot registers within a frame, but roughly there is at least 16 to 32 milliseconds of delay from OBS picking up my mouse click to the weapon firing in game. For reference, in Overwatch, my weapon always fires on the same frame as the click, and the same happens in Apex Legends. So, in these two examples, there is roughly 0 to 16 milliseconds of potential delay.
Damn, I can't imagine Apex playing better than any game, really. So that's news to me.
In the finals, this extra delay means I can click when the crosshair is over the target, but the shot doesn't fire until a frame later when the crosshair is now elsewhere. With how fast your crosshair is moving during a flick, every bit of delay has a massive impact. This doesn't make the weapons unusable by any means, and by changing my aiming style from flick click to flick, place the crosshair where they're about to be or on top of them, then click, I could use them well enough. Tracking weapons like the LMGs and assault rifles feel fine, as the delay isn't quite as impactful, but it's still something I would like to see them fix in the future. My next gripe is with the weapon recoil. Honestly, it's not bad, they've just done something that I don't agree with. Unfortunately, I didn't record this in-game before the playtest ended, but their recoil patterns are similar to what you would see in CSGO or Apex Legends, where the weapons pull in a certain direction and then swing heavily left to right. My issue with doing this in high time to kill games is that no one bothers to learn or compensate for these patterns, and so you shouldn't.
Oh yeah, that feels really shit.
Recoil is far too gentle for it to be worth worrying about. All this does is subtly throw off people's aim in certain moments, when
Yeah, your best bet is to just put the dot on the bad guy and then just strafe aim it.
really they were aiming just fine. For example, if you are tracking an enemy moving to the right and your weapon starts recoiling to the right, you can start to over-aim. It's
Yeah.
almost like your sensitivity was suddenly cranked up. I don't think this adds any value to the gunplay, and in my opinion, it's a weird relic that devs include in games simply because that's how it's been done in the past.
Yep. Just appeal to tradition, because that's the way it's been done. So everybody must like it. Oh boy.
Personally, I'd prefer to see automatic weapons having a vertical recoil seed than having pseudo-random horizontal recoil for each bullet. This gives you the same recoil feel, but without the sudden moments of weirdness. For some context,
I'd be down
vertical
with that.
recoil is easier to control because it only moves in one direction. All we need to do is to pull down to compensate for it. Horizontal recoil is harder to control because it can go left and right, so we can't just pull in
Yeah.
one direction. A bizarre, predetermined recoil pattern doesn't need to be a weapon's identity. Instead, for example, an LMG with a large magazine can inject some more horizontal recoil, so you have the sensation of having to fight to keep your crosshair centered and on target. Whereas an assault rifle can have reduced vertical and horizontal recoil, as it's more of a precision weapon. Yet even within that class, you can tweak things around. A higher powered, lower fire rate weapon like the FCAR can inject some more vertical recoil and further reduce the horizontal recoil. This gives it that punchy feeling while reducing the randomness of the horizontal recoil to reward precision. And finally, SMGs can inject much more vertical recoil. This hardly impacts their close range performance, but makes aiming at further distances much more challenging. Extremely high fire rate SMGs can also add in some more horizontal recoil to trade off for the fire rate and DPS. This leaves you with recoil that suits each weapon, feels like recoil, and doesn't create odd moments where aiming just doesn't feel right. As for the iron sights on almost every weapon, I personally would prefer the option for some clean sights, but if it's a
Dang, do you not get like reticles and shit, like red dots and so on and so forth? Do all the guns operate like that with just iron sights?
design and balanced decision to have it this way, then that's okay by me. The weapon still felt fine with iron sights. I'm just a sucker for having as much visual clarity as possible, especially
Yeah.
when trying to aim for headshots. When you only have an iron sight and you're aiming at the head, your gun covers their body, so it's easy to lose track of them and makes it difficult to read their movement. And this is being very pedantic, but I have to say I'd rather the sniper scope didn't have that warping effect at the edges. Consistent and accurate flick shots require you to know your current crosshair position, the position of your target.
Ah, I see what you mean. Like, what the fuck is this, dude? Like, it's straight right there, but then it just warps for what? For the sake of immersion? Get the fuck out of here, dude. Oh my god. It's so fucking hilarious to try to listen to like a developer justify a specific game design decision in one reason and to not use that same reason when they don't implement it in a different way.
Target and the distance in between. The warped image makes it difficult to judge exactly how far you need to flick. The weight classes and abilities aren't anything new, they're simply implemented well. Each class has their identity and their own strengths and weaknesses. Playing the finals for the first time, I was worried that the small, fast class would be too strong, as it so often is in these types of games. Small hitboxes and high mobility is so incredibly valuable and almost always comes out on top. Think back to Apex Legends launch and how incredibly strong Wraith was and how terrible Gibraltar was. Yet in the finals, all of the classes feel strong for their own reasons. The existence of certain utility like the defibrillator, healing beam, and shields could cause some headaches in the future, especially for the ranked modes, making the game play out more like a MOBA or Overwatch 2 and less like an FPS. They tend to be the type of utility that either shouldn't exist at all, and if they do, they end up being a balancing nightmare. My final point as to why the finals has done so well is that we've been in an FPS game drought. I don't want to
Well, that's pretty true, dude. I mean, like there honestly hasn't been anything really interesting. Like unless you play the game or stream the game and it's your job to do it, then there's not really much for to like pick and choose from.
To take anything away from what they've built or achieved, it just seems to me that people, and myself included, have been desperate for a new, fun FPS to play, and it's easier to stand out when there isn't as much competition. I imagine if this game was released in 2016 and had to compete with the launch of games like Overwatch and Battlefield 1, it may not have enjoyed the same success as this recent playtest. Don't get me wrong, the game is great and a lot of fun to play. I'm just trying my best to put things into context.
Yeah.
If you're looking to take your aim to a whole new level, you can check out the mouse mod I designed and released over at struthgaminggear.com, or learn all about how they work in this video here. Thanks so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll catch you in the next one.
But you're nice.
Yeah, I mean the finals looks good. I hope it does well. I mean, when it officially gets released, I'll give it a shot. I'll check it out. But I mean, like, what other shooters are coming out? Like, I know what was it? The new Modern Warfare 3 just launched or whatever recently, but I haven't been a COD guy since forever. And what's that Ubisoft shooter? I forgot, but supposedly that's like another one. And other than that, there hasn't really been much of anything. So I mean, it's nice to know that this game has like decent gameplay. So I don't know, I'll give it a shot when it comes out. But no, that's pretty much it. I'll catch you guys later. Peace.